All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are going to be covering the final subclass that is unique to the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide, and that is the Undying Pact Warlock. Now, there is one other subclass we haven't touched on yet, which is the Storm Sorcerer, but that subclass is reprinted in Xanathar's, so just like we did with the Rogue, I'm just going to cover that with the other two Xanathar subclasses and go from there. So, let's dive into the Undying Warlock. First things first, just like every one of these videos, I'm going to start off with a slight refresher on 5th edition class design. Wow. As soon as I said that, brain just turned off. In 5th edition, every class is meant to play very differently right from the beginning. And in order to do this, every class has these things that we call defining features. These are things that make the class play differently, and in order to be a defining feature, it has to show up within the first 2 levels. What are the Warlock's defining features? Well, first things first, they have what's called Pact magic. Pact magic is how they cast spells, but unlike literally every other spellcaster in the game, Pact magic is unique. They have significantly less spell slots. Most spellcasters will have up to 4 spell slots per level of spell that they know. They'll generally start with 2 or 3 when they first learn that level of spell casting, and then as they gain more levels, they will go up to 3, and then 4 is the maximum they will ever have of any spell level. The Warlock doesn't get that. The Warlock, for about half of its lifespan, the Warlock only has 2 spell slots. It starts with 1 spell slot. At 2nd level, goes to 2 spell slots. At 11th level, it finally goes to 3 spell slots. And then 17, it goes to 4. Warlocks never have more than 4 spell slots. Now, the unique thing about it is all of their spell slots are the same level, and they're the highest level spells that they can currently cast up to 5th level. So, while at 2nd level, they have 2 spell slots that are about spell slots that are both 1st level. When they get to 3rd level, they still have 2 spell slots, but they are now 2nd level spell slots. And that's how their casting goes. Their 1st through 5th level spells are always cast at the highest possible level that they can, up to level 5. Now, because they have so many fewer spell slots than literally any other class, they're also unique in the fact that they regain their spell slots on a short rest, versus every other spellcasting class only getting them back on a long rest, unless they do something like the Wizard having their ability to restore a few spell slots using Arcane Recovery. So it does make them a very unique spellcaster in that they are relatively dependent on their short rests, and because their spells are always cast at the highest level and are relatively limited, Warlock spells in general are doozies. They tend to hit hard. They tend to do a lot of different things at the same time because they're very rare. It also means that Warlocks are very, very dependent on their cantrips, because those are the magic spells they can cast all the time. Now, in addition to their Pact magic, they also have this thing called Eldritch Invocations. Eldritch Invocations are basically ways to customize your Warlock, almost like mini feats. Generally, what they do is they will modify how a spell works permanently, so that by taking that Eldritch Invocation, you can use that spell differently than any other spellcasters, and it makes Warlocks highly customizable. And even two Warlocks that are using the exact same subclass can play vastly differently depending on the Eldritch Invocations they get. To give you some examples, one of the most popular invocations is called Agonizing Blast. It lets you add your Charisma modifier to the damage of the Eldritch Blast cantrip. Now, the unique thing about Eldritch Blast is, unlike other cantrips, as they level up, other cantrips will just add extra damage to their attack. So, like Firebolt does 1d10 at level 1. At level 5, it does 2d10 to damage. And goes up like that. Agonizing or Eldritch Blast gives you an additional Eldritch Blast every time it levels up. So at level 1 to 4, you can cast one Eldritch Blast, or you fire one blast when you cast the spell. At 5th, you fire to 2. At 11th, you do 3. 17th, you do 4, if I remember correctly. Because Agonizing Blast adds Charisma modifier to the damage it deals on a hit, Eldritch Blast can, at max level, hit 4 times. You would add your Charisma modifier 4 times, once for each hit. And that kind of shows you how it changes how you play your Warlock. Effectively, a Warlock with Agonizing Blast and the Eldritch Blast cantrip can effectively get as many attacks as a fighter. And the difference being, they don't use a weapon to do those attacks. They use their spellcasting focus. But it still works the same way. They still use their Charisma modifier instead of Strength or Dexterity, but they'll add their Charisma modifier to the attack roll. They'll add their Charisma modifier to the damage roll. So you can have a very kind of, I guess, physical almost, a very fighter-feeling Warlock. Or you can go a completely opposite direction. Another really common one is the second Eldritch Invocation is Armor of Shadows, which lets you cast Mage Armor on yourself at will, basically taking a first level spell and turning it into a cantrip, which is another very, very common thing for Warlocks. They will get different ways that they can use spells, and they will have spells that would normally require spell slots, and they will find other ways to cast them. So yeah, those are the two things that define the Warlock: your Pact magic and your Eldritch Invocations. Normally, I would say a subclass should figure out a way to modify those in some way, shape, or form. However, first things first, you choose your subclass at level 1, so it's another one of those interesting ones where you pick your subclass at level 1, so you can call it a defining feature, because that will change it. But your subclass is really going to help dictate what spells you learn. It will help to dictate what Eldritch Invocations you get, because it's right there at first level. Instead of your subclass modifying your defining features like most, your defining features are going to help modify your subclass. So it's a little weird, but to be blunt, it's a lot of fun. Warlocks are super fun to play if you understand them. So let's dive into the Undying Pact Warlock itself. So, right at first level, the first thing you get is an expanded spell list. This is true of almost every spellcasting subclass. They'll generally get access to new spells or something like that. The unique thing about Warlocks is they don't learn new spells like a cleric, where they always have these spells available to them. No, their expanded spell list is literally that. it adds more spells to the Warlock's spell list that you can learn. However, to use any of these spells, you have to use one of the spells known, one of the spells that you learn as you level up to use these spells. So it simply means that you have access to a slightly larger spell list, but you're still limited in the number of spells that you know, which kind of fits in with the Pact magic, having limited spell slots. Now you have limited spells. But that does mean that on the expanded spell list, these are all going to be spells that a Warlock normally cannot cast, because there would be no reason to put them on if they were regular Warlock spells. The expanded spell list for the Undying Warlock kind of fits the theme. Quite literally, the Undying Warlock is a Warlock that is built on the idea of everlasting life. Their Pact Master might be someone like a Lich. It might be Vecna. It might be any creature, maybe even a Celestial or something that does not die, and their hope is that by forming this pact, they will no longer have to worry about mortality. Because of that, they can be a very kind of interesting role-playing aspect, and the spells that you get are going to kind of reflect that idea of, well, are you looking for everlasting life, kind of in the same way a Lich looks for everlasting life, where they're basically doing whatever sacrifice they have to make sure that they never die. Or are you doing it to save other people? You have all these different things. And so, yeah, they have things like false life, which just lets you give yourself temporary hit points. Silence, feigned death, death war, all the way up to things like contagion and legend lore at 5th level spell slots. So, yeah, none of them really kind of jump out at me at like, oh, this is amazing, but most of them feel like really, really useful role-playing decisions versus mechanical decisions. Yeah. The other thing you get at first level is called Among the Dead. Starting at first level, you learn the Spare the Dying cantrip, which counts as a Warlock cantrip for you. You also have advantage on saving throws against any disease. So we'll start with that. There's a second half we'll go over in a bit, but let's start with that. So Spare the Dying is a cleric cantrip, and it's a remarkably useful one. Basically what it is, you touch a living creature that has 0 hit points, the creature becomes stable. This spell has no effect on undead or constructs. Spare the Dying effectively is used to ensure that none of your allies are rolling death saves and dying. It's incredibly useful because once you cast Spare the Dying on them, it will also clear out any fails or successes on their death saves. So what that effectively means is if you have someone that is has 2 failed death saves, their next death save might actually kill the character. If you use Spare the Dying on them, it wipes them clean, and they don't have to make any death saves until they take more damage. It's incredibly common in higher level play, where enemies will try to murder unconscious allies, or they're using area effect spells that are just causing you, anytime you take damage when you're at 0 hit points and unconscious, you fail a death save. So Spare the Dying can help ensure that you're not losing party members to just area effects that you can't stop. So yeah, that's really useful. Advantage on saving throws against diseases is less so. There's not a ton of diseases in 5th edition. I mean, they're there, but they don't. Diseased is not a condition like poisoned or something like that is. Disease is just kind of a special kind of poison type thing that is really, really bad, but it doesn't come up as much. So that's not quite as useful. The second half of Among the Dead effectively acts as a sanctuary spell. Basically, if an undead targets you directly with an attack or a harmful spell, that creature must make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. They don't need to do it when they include you in an area of effect, like the explosion of a fireball, so only if they actually to target you. On a failed save, the creature must choose a new target or forfeit targeting someone instead of you, potentially wasting the attack or spell. On a successful save, the creature is immune to this effect for 24 hours, and an undead is also immune to this effect for 24 hours if you target it with an attack or a harmful spell. So, effectively, until a warlock attacks an undead to the target, they have to succeed on a wisdom saving throw in order to make any attacks against them. That means a number of things. Most people think of it as like, oh, they're not going to be targeting me. Well, yes. However, if you want to use this in a more aggressive manner, that means in a swarm of low wisdom undead, your warlock can walk into the middle of them and not have to worry about getting attacked. Or your warlock can stand in a doorway when you have zombies coming at you, and just stand there, picking them off one by one. Because as long as they don't attack or target one of these undead creatures, and the creatures aren't making their wisdom save, they can't target the warlock. So yes, it is nice that undead creatures are not going to be able to target them until the warlock does something aggressive to them first. But don't forget, you can use that to your advantage. When you're fighting undead as an undying warlock, be aggressive. Get right up to them. Step in between the enemy and your ally, providing partial cover and the things like that. Like, if they can't attack you, use that to your advantage. Going up to 6th level, we get Defy Death. Starting at 6th level, you can give yourself Vitality when you cheat death or when you help someone else cheat it. You can regain hit points equal to 1d8 plus your Constitution modifier, minimum of 1, when you succeed on a death saving throw or when you stabilize a creature with Spare the Dying. And once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a little long rest. So this is a really, really cool ability that is hampered by it being so insanely limited. I've talked about this before. One and done abilities are never used, or they're very, very rarely used, because players will go, well, I could use it at this point, but what if I need to use it later and I can't because I used my only use of it now? The ability feels so special, players just don't use it. And I've seen this over and over. I've done it myself. If you just increase it to two uses per long rest, it's not that massive a change, but people will use the abilities significantly more. And not just they use one and then they save the other one like they did the first. No, they will use... Thank you. Thank you for the phone. They will use both uses of the ability just because it doesn't feel as rare. And that's what I would like to see with this, is just twice per long rest instead of once would be perfect for it. But that being said, this is super cool. Being able to regain a D8 plus your con mod hit points when you spare someone else is not that big a deal. I understand why they did do it, and it might be a useful thing. However, being able to do it when you succeed on a death save is massively useful, because you make the death saves at the beginning of your turn, not the end. So with Defy Death, that means if your Warlock goes down for whatever reason, at the start of your next turn, as long as you make your death save, doesn't have to be a nat 20 or anything, as long as it is above 10, you get to come back and have your full turn, which is awesome. Like I said, the only issue with it is you only get once per long rest. So you want to kind of pick your fight. But yeah, that means this particular Warlock is going to be very, very difficult for enemies to get rid of. It might make them a bit of a target for smarter enemies, because they'll notice that you just keep getting up, and you keep getting other people up. But yeah, still super useful. Yeah. Going to the 10th level, you get Undying Nature. Beginning at 10th level, you can hold your breath indefinitely, and you don't require food, water, or sleep, although you still require rest to reduce exhaustion and still benefit from finishing short and long rests. In addition, you age at a slower rate. For every 10 years that pass, your body ages only 1 year, and you're immune to being magically aged. So, this one is less useful in general. It's kind of a role-playing thing. Like, yes, I mean, food and water and stuff like that are part of the exploration aspect, but it's a part that a lot of DMs don't generally tend to put a huge emphasis on, because there's so much else you can do in the exploring aspect than going, oh, do you have all the food that you need? Holding your breath indefinitely, super useful. Again, anytime you're underwater, that means you're going to be able to do whatever you need to there. You don't have to breathe at all. You can cast your spells and everything, and not have to worry about having water breathing or anything like that. So that's kind of useful. But beyond that, the magically aging thing, there is like 1 or 2 spells in the entire game that will magically age you, and the effects of them are almost purely role playing. Which again, I'm not saying role playing is a bad thing, but from a mechanical aspect, there's just not a whole lot to this ability. It's not that it's bad or anything, and the hold your breath indefinitely thing is pretty cool. I mean, it effectively means things like poison, as long as you can, hold your breath before the poison shows up. You can pretty effectively argue, oh yeah, I'm not breathing the poison. Well, then I need you to, roll to hold your breath. No, I don't have to breathe. Oh yeah, that's right. So there are some mechanical benefits to it, but they're kind of limited. Yeah. Finally, when you reach 14th level, you get Indestructible Life. On your turn, you can use a bonus action to regain hit points equal to 1d8 plus your Warlock level. Additionally, if you put a severed body part of yours back in place when you use this feature, the part reattaches. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Again, one and dones, not a huge fan of. Shorter long rest is a little bit better, especially since Warlocks are already very short rest dependent. This can be super useful. This is effectively the fighter's second wind. Except because you don't get it until 14th level, it is already remarkably useful. On average, you're going to be getting around 19 hit points from this, which doesn't sound like a lot, but Warlocks don't have massive hit die, so that's probably 2 or 3 hit die worth of recharge rolls effectively. So it's a pretty decent amount of health. Again, fighters do it a lot. And because of the Among the Dead aspect, thank you. I will pick that up in a moment, phone. Because of the Among the Dead aspect, you can play your Warlock very aggressively with Indestructible Life. It allows you to kind of go out, take some damage, heal yourself as a bonus action, and then use your action to just do more bad stuff. Whether that's casting some of your cantrips, using some of your leveled spells. By the time you reach 14th level, you actually have what are called Mystic Arcanum, which is basically how they cast spells above 5th level. You learn 1 6th level, 1 7th level, 1 8th level, and 1 9th level. So it's a spell that you can each cast once. Yeah, with your Mystic Arcanum and Indestructible Life, you can heal yourself and then unleash something really powerful at the same time. Final thoughts. there's some interesting things about the Undying Pact Warlock. Um, the Spare the Dying thing is interesting, but they don't really do a ton with it other than giving you access to it. And Spare the Dying is an action, so you have to give up casting one of your other cantrips or give up casting one of your leveled spells, your Mystic Arcanum, to do it. So it does create kind of a support aspect to a Warlock, but none of the expanded Undying spells really help you to fit into that kind of support Warlock aspect. And then the other half of Among the Dead is much more aggressive. So the Spare the Dying thing is a little bit weird. Defy Death is super, super useful. Undying Nature has almost no use. And then Indestructible Life has its points, but it just feels like it's missing something. And again, a lot of what's going to make a Warlock different is going to be their spell choices and the things like that. But yeah, I think they could have done more with the Undying aspect of it. Like, I would have loved to see, maybe instead of Undying Nature at 10, they give you something else that improves your Spare the Dying. Like, maybe your Spare the Dying can give them advantage on their next death save, or maybe it can regain a single hit point or something like that. Just something to make it actually worthwhile, other than Defy Death, which is a one and done ability. Yeah. So anyway, that is going to be all for me today. As always, if you enjoyed this, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of these videos. Hit the bell icon and turn notifications on. And in the comments below, what could you see as something that would really kind of exemplify a creature that worships something that has transcended the idea of death? What ability would just kind of make sense for someone trying to attain immortality as they level up? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, that's all for me today, and I will see you next time. All right? Bye-bye.